But there is a whole city ordinance that tells you what color on what day it can be. So we're really looking forward to that. Anyway, I hope I made it within our 10 minutes. I just want to let you know that I will be around afterwards. I have some books with me today. If you're interested in getting one, they're $10. I have some cards with a QR code on it. You can decide later and get it off Amazon. It's in paperback and in ebook as well. And with that, I will pass it on to our next speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, just in case Susan went over, I have yielded a couple of minutes of the time to her in respect of her work, of course. My topic is building bridges, not the kind that Susan built. My topic is about building bridges of communication. Now, I am particularly qualified for this presentation. Number one, I know Mike Amos. And number two, I'm an East Dallas gal. And number three, I spent 30 years as a mediator working with attorneys, and that's kind of like herding cats. But nevertheless, 90% of mediations do in fact result in a settlement. So, I understand that we have an image of Skillman Street. There we go. As you can see, Skillman actually starts down at Live Oak, down south, and it goes on up to where the Skillman Bridge is now, and goes on from there, as we would say in Dallas, beyond, because who knows what is beyond Dallas city limits. Well, okay, we're dealing with aesthetic bridges instead of physical bridges. And that is really important because can you even imagine the number of communications, negotiations, problem solving that Susan had to go through in connecting the city of Dallas, the county of Dallas, and she even had to work with the feds. So that was a lot of communication, and she could most likely teach this part of the presentation because of this negotiation. By the way, I read her book. It is fascinating. We're talking about a citizen, a resident of Dallas who just decided she was going to build a bridge, and she did it. So I highly recommend that you purchase her book at the end. So, how to build bridges? Well, first of all, we have to have a different mindset. We cannot just communicate in the way we want to communicate. We have to communicate in a way that is going to connect with our audience. And you already know when you're dealing with a child, for example, you talk differently to a child than you would one of your peers. So you really already know how to do that. So there are certain skills that will assist you in building bridges of communication. First of all, you have to listen. And I know that sounds really simple, but it is harder for some than others. And you probably have all had this experience where someone is talking to you and you're not really listening, but what you are doing is thinking about what you're going to say in response to what they're saying. Empathy is a very important factor because if you cannot put yourself in their shoes to try to understand what's important to them, then you are not going to reach a resolution with them. You got to have an open dialogue. And by open dialogue, I mean, first of all, you got to make clear and concise statements. Don't be vague or beat around the bush. Just come out and say it. Whatever it is you're interested in. You have to be sincere. Because if somebody doesn't think you're being sincere, they're going to turn off. They're not going to listen any further. Also, no hiding the ball. If you're talking about a particular subject and there's something important that you're not bothering to mention, you're going to lose credibility with your audience. Next, I say you have to be bilingual, and that doesn't mean that you have to speak Spanish as well as English. What it means is, in addition to the verbal communication, you have to understand the non-verbal communication. For example, this gentleman right here is crossing his arms, which generally means by nonverbal experts that he either does not agree with me or he is not really connecting with me. So I'm going to have to work on you there.
Neither is true.
Okay, you got to find common ground. I cannot tell you how many times as a mediator that I listened to people arguing back and forth, and they were giving their points that they thought were important, but they weren't listening to each other, and I was jotting down all the points they actually had in common. And then when you present that to them, they're shocked. They're shocked that the other side agreed on these points because they weren't listening. But that is a very, very important aspect, to be able to find that common ground. And on that point, you might not resolve the entire dispute, the entire argument. You may only be able to resolve part of it based on these common points, and then fine. Resolve what you can resolve, because the secret is, once somebody resolves even part of a situation, then they have a vested interest, and they actually are more inclined to go ahead and resolve the rest of it. I'm getting to this guy. He's no longer crossing his arms here. So, then, this is a question that comes up a lot to me. How do I get my way? Well, we're coming at it the wrong way. You need to be thinking about how we can get our way, not how I can get our way. You've probably all heard about how important it is to have a win-win resolution, where everybody walks away thinking, I got something out of that. And that is so important, because if you have a win-win, then both parties now have a vested interest to work together. So the win-win is extremely important. I'm going to give you an example. Take the U.S. Congress. Please take the U.S. Congress. We have a situation where we got the two parties are just polar opposite. They're standing their ground, you might say. They're refusing to negotiate, sometimes refusing to let certain points of view even be expressed. And this is not a political statement, because, as you all know, when we get to this point of our lives, we know the pendulum swings. One party has the advantage at one point, and then the pendulum swings. So therefore, if you don't include the other side in the negotiations and try to work something out, then the underdogs have no vested interest at all. And when that pendulum swings and they become in power, they're not going to have any vested interest in keeping the resolutions that were important to the other side. And that is why you've got to have a win-win, even when you have lopsided power. So, what are the benefits of building bridges? Well, first of all, civil discussion. I mean, I've gotten where I don't want my grandkids watching C-SPAN to listen to how the, Congress people talk to each other. They're rude, and as my mother would say, not nice. So, the civil discussion is a benefit. Peaceful dialogue is a benefit. A professional demeanor is a benefit. And getting along. It just kind of comes down to what we learned in kindergarten. If you're nice to the person, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And I am going to close with a joke on that very subject about the importance of being nice. In this joke, an ICE agent shows up on a rural farm and tells the farmer, I gotta check all your structures and make sure you're not hiding any illegal aliens. And the farmer says, okay, but just be sure you don't go in this pasture over here. And the ICE agent is furious, and he gets out his badge and he shoves that badge in the face of the farmer, and he says, you see the badge? I am an ICE agent. I can go anywhere I want. And the farmer goes, okay. And so the farmer goes on about his business, and pretty soon, just as he expected, he hears the ICE agent screaming his guts out, help me, help me. And he looks over and he sees the bull that lives in that pasture that he told the ICE agent not to go into, chasing that ICE agent, and the ICE agent just can't seem to get ahead enough to exit the gate. So he's running around and screaming and begging for help. So the farmer, he lumbers over to the fence and he looks at the ICE agent and he says, show him your badge. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. Thank you, Carol. I haven't met you, but I've had a chance to talk with others. I first of all want to say something to all of you. I love you. My wife and I are new residents at PBN. I've known a few of you, Corbett. We go way back. I've known a few of you from before. And I have based what are going to be 10 minutes on Susan's book. In chapter 7, Susan says, expect the unexpected. From Mike, I just learned something about the unexpected. The picture you see is the Mackinac Bridge. It's a Smoot bridge. The first year of its existence, the largest suspension bridge in the world. Its first full year was 1958. I didn't know that until just now. Susan said, expect the unexpected. I also learned during the presentation that you ladies made that Tip Housewright was very involved in this. I knew this, but you don't know that I know Tip Housewright. I know Tip Housewright's father. Tip Housewright's father knows Barbara Baker, who now lives 2 houses from me at PBN. I have been involved in volunteer work with Tip Housewright's father for the better part of 3 decades. Expect the unexpected. 2 days ago, I had the privilege of sitting in on a national broadcast. And this will excite you, and I'm going to close with this. Mike, when you're ready to haul me off the stage, I'll go to the conclusion. I'm going to share something rather profound with you that I learned 2 days ago. Expect the unexpected. I had a chance to sit in the studio of a national broadcast of an interview by a young man, 25 years old, who decided to run for Congress for the first time this year and got 40,000 votes as a conservative in a very blue county in Texas. And he was talking about what's going on with Generation Z. I'm going to conclude with something that's happened this week. Expect the unexpected. 2 days before that, there was a treaty signed in the Middle East. 3,000 years of conflict between nations. We've got some peace. It may not last. But we've had 8 wars settled in the last 9 months. On October 9th, expect the unexpected. I ran into Adam Magoo, whose photo you just see. I didn't know this a week ago. But my son-in-law called in the afternoon and said, Dad, I'm going to be baptized tonight. I went to his baptism. Adam Magoo is one of his best friends. And I learned about the Skillman Street Bridge and some things that maybe you probably know. But Adam said originally his constituency wanted him to address building walls. His constituency was concerned about soundproofing LBJ for the noise. You know this, Susan. And what was ironic, and Adam talked about the irony of 2016 election, it was all about building